Thank you, Representative Titus. Chair now recognizes Representative Davidson.
I thank the chairman, and look, I appreciate this hearing. It's certainly timely. When we talk about woke and weaponized government, it's easy to get desensitized to the long list of frivolous, frankly, pretty radical programs that are being exposed. You know, stuff like $1.5 million for DEI in Serbia, $47,000 for transgender operas in Colombia, $2 million. The former ambassador to Guatemala talked to me about this, $2 million for transgender surgeries in conservative country like Guatemala. It's a long list. I mean, USAID funded scholarships for people who became terrorists like Anwar al-Awlaki. We've sent, under the guise of USAID, we sent money to UNRWA, which returned funds directly to Hamas. In blatant violation of U.S. law, the Helms Amendment, PEPFAR has funded abortions and killed babies. What is happening in Africa is just the tip of the pro-abortion iceberg that the Biden administration weaponized aid agencies into. It also happens to be against the law that Congress has passed. So USAID funded independent media, so-called, in Hungary, but it was actually trying to run a color revolution playbook to overturn the government, very popular government of Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who's a NATO ally. So let's be clear, this color cultural revolution playbook hasn't just been weaponized against allies in foreign countries. It's been brought home and weaponized against our own citizens right here. If you had unapproved opinions of COVID vaccines or origins of COVID or maybe the Hunter Biden laptop story, there was almost certainly a puppet NGO working overtime on taxpayer dollars, which contradicts the word NGO in the first place, to shut down or deplatform speech in America. That's a clear violation of the First Amendment. So, look, our staff has heard every day from terrible stories about the abuse of our government in conflict with our own national interest in places like Uganda, where if they don't embrace aborting babies, they will be retaliated against and have aid taken away from them. I mean, coercive activities. So thank goodness President Trump has brought us back into the Geneva Consensus Declaration, protecting life, building pro-life, and other values that align with America First policies. They advance our interests, but they also help our allies advance their interests. And that's probably it's terrible to waste the money, but it's also terrible to not just waste it, but to actually work against the interests of the United States. So, look, I agree that there's probably some things, and we'll get to those things, that are good. But when you have a completely non-responsive agency actively working to undermine the guidance that Congress is giving them, they don't steer. So last July, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a colleague of ours, introduced an amendment to defund USAID. And the amendment was defeated 81 to 331. Now, I voted yes, but 331 colleagues were opposed to this, somewhat radical change. I bet the vote would be different today. But thanks, Secretary Rubio's going to take charge and say, yeah, we're going to do the good things. We're just going to turn it off and we're going to clean house. And I think that's where they were. We knew there were abuses there, but, that's what we're up against, folks. So let's just, Mr. Primorik, you've written about disgraceful efforts in the Biden administration to bully conservative countries into accepting radical gender theory, abortion policies, a far-left agenda. In a piece last year, you wrote that East African faith leaders viewed USAID staff as, quote, missionaries of evil because the Biden administration hijacked popular aid programs to promote their agenda. Could you elaborate on that?
I traveled to Africa a couple of times last year and spoken to many of them who visit here in the United States. And many of them, like me, remember the 1990s, where I was involved in democracy development, and we helped turn the former Warsaw countries into allies of the United States. But these were values that were akin to our Bill of Rights. Things have really radically changed a lot. I've spoken to a lot of faith-based organizations that are feeding hungry. In Kenya, for instance, they have so many refugees from surrounding countries. Some of these dioceses, they simply will not take U.S. funding because it's tied to all. It had been tied to all of these things. I did I monitored or moderated a panel on Africa at Liberty University, and a governor from the northern part of Nigeria had a conversation with Samantha Power, who told her that you have to tie food aid with all of this other woke stuff.
Crazy leverage. And look, I wish I could talk more, and I will submit questions for the record because, Mr. Yoho, look, nevertheless, there are certain things post USAID's demise and the imminent funeral for this agency that we might want to keep intact. So how do we advance our interest? I look forward to collaborating with you all, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Chair now recognizes Representative Amo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, it's ironic that